Hi everyone, Bill Duvendack here with an April 2022 astrological preview video. So get cozy, grab your coffee, and let's talk shop, shall we? April starts off with a new moon on the 1st. So there's going to be a lot of emphasis on Aries. Now, here's the thing, and some of you may have already seen this, but I want to take a moment to talk about it. Chiron has been making its way through Aries for a while, and because most of the astrological activity right now is in Aries, then Chiron and the moon are going to be major players for the month of April. Chiron is the planet of the wound and the wounded healer. And when it's in Aries, it tells us that wounds are going to be triggered. These wounds have to do with a sense of being or a sense of self or willpower or possibly even spiritual wounds. So first of all, if you're easily triggered, this is going to be a rough month for you. However, if you have thick skin and the benefit of wisdom from experience, then April is going to be a good month for opportunities for healing and growth. All of this has already kicked off, and it reaches a new point of a new cycle on the 1st. So just know ahead of time that, this could be a challenging month if you've got problems that you're not addressing as well as you could have. Now, in this new moon, we also have Mercury, so you might find that words wound. I'm sure many of you saw the assault that we witnessed at the awards show on Sunday night, and that's kind of illustrating this new moon vibe. A wounded sense of self, wounded sense of being, harsh words, and bam, you have violence. Now, at the same time, though, this new moon is sextiling Mars, Venus, and Saturn in Aquarius, which tells us that the way to proceed is through intelligently addressing wounds, intelligently addressing healing, recognizing that the wounds may not be your fault, but the healing is. Recognizing that the world doesn't owe you a goddamn thing. You're always going to be facing something that triggers your wound, so shut the fuck up and deal with it. And yes, as much as I am saying this to you, I'm reminding it of myself. Walking on eggshells around people is ridiculous. So if you're easily triggered by words, get some help. If you're not easily triggered by words, then after situations come up, look within and see what is the intelligent and healthy thing to do. That's where Mars, Venus, and Saturn come into play, because they remind us of moderation. They remind us of doing the intelligent thing. They remind us of looking at what the best solutions are for all people involved. We also have that energy lasting not just on the 1st for the new moon, but also through the 4th. So the first 4 days of April are going to be all about recognizing wounds, figuring out how you want to fix them, and applying intelligence and evolution to the situation. Now, for most of the month, we also have Jupiter and Neptune conjunct in Pisces. Both planets rule Pisces, so there's a lot of emphasis right now on spirituality. There's also a lot of emphasis on escapism and denial. So tread lightly. The good news is if your attention is focused on the spiritual and the finer realms, you could achieve a lot of forward momentum and personal growth during April, as long as you're working with the higher vibrational side and not the lower side of escaping dealing with reality. There's no getting around it. We all die. We're all born. So those two initiations are the greatest ones on the spiritual path that we are going to have in this lifetime. Everything else in between is simply working through what we need to work through, and keeping that in mind in April would be wise to do. Now, on the 5th, Venus enters into Pisces, so you might find the romantic life spice up a little bit. And this could be anything from sexual encounters all the way to just feeling a deeper emotional connection with loved ones or perhaps a romantic partner. Now, the drawback to Venus in Pisces is that it's all about sensitivity. Some would argue being overly sensitive. So take what your loved ones say with a grain of salt. And this especially comes true on the 5th when the moon in Gemini squares Venus in Pisces as well. So duplicitous words may trigger emotional reactions, or little conversations. For those of you people that enjoy music, you should know the title of that song that I just quoted. Little conversations may do more harm than good. We move on to the 6th when we've got the moon sextiling Mercury, the sun, and Chiron all in Aries, which means it's a good time for healing. So connect the dots. The 1st through the 4th is going to reveal the wounds, and then the 6th is when you get an opportunity to heal the wounds. The 7th brings us the moon in Cancer trining Venus. So you might find your emotions are stronger than normal, but that this is a good thing and it's laying the foundation for further work yet to come. This also means your intuition is going to be on point. And for those of you that have heavy Scorpio in your chart, the right around the 7th or so might be an opportunity for an initiation into a new state of spirituality and a new state of being. Following this, on the 8th and the 9th, the moon continues to move through Cancer, and it squares Sun, Chiron, and then Mercury on the 9th. So we see a cycle here. The 1st through the 4th is about exposing the wounds. The 6th and the 7th is about addressing and healing the wounds. And then the 8th, 9th, and 10th are all about the universe testing us to see if we can apply what we have learned. And that's the question. Can we? We may think that we can, but until it's put in our face, there's really no answer to that. On the 11th, the moon is in Leo and it trines the sun in Aries, so it's a good time to start new workout routines. It's a good time to start new spiritual disciplines. But at the same time, the moon opposes Saturn and Mars. In traditional astrology, both Saturn and Mars are known as malefics. And the reason this matters is that the 11th, the 12th, even into the 13th and 14th, you may find that the tension that is present has to do with facing things that you might rather avoid, or facing things that you thought were dealt with. So it might be irritating that they come back up again. But then on the 13th and the 14th, as it moves towards the end of that few day cycle, the emphasis shifts from the mental plane or the mind to the emotions and the heart. So understanding what's going on the 10th through the 12th or so is a good idea. And then the 13th and 14th, it's time to feel it. It's time to listen to what you need emotionally and spiritually to move forward. This is continued on the 15th when the moon opposes Chiron and Mars moves into Pisces. So you may find that around the middle of the month, what you get is an increased draw to spirituality, an increased draw to living your spiritual beliefs on a daily basis. Now, the 16th brings the full moon. So you can see that all this dance from about the 8th to the 16th or so is setting the stage for the full moon. And this full moon is trining Saturn in Aquarius, meaning that the full moon on April 16th is a perfect time to lay the foundation for where you want to go in groups and group activity and group participation now through the end of October when the sun finally moves into Scorpio. So I've been talking a lot over the last few months about groups and group participation, and the reason for that is all of the activity that has been moving through Aquarius. No person is an island. Nobody stands alone. I don't give a damn what you think. We all need each other in some capacity in order to get through life. So the good news is I've been talking about this for a while, and I hope you have been taking advantage of it, because by the end of April, most of that activity is out of Aquarius and into Pisces. So the concept of group participation and doing things that are best for all comes to a close towards the end of April, just in time for Pluto to go retrograde. The 17th sees the moon in Scorpio trining Venus in Pisces. So you may find it's a good time to listen to your intuition, especially when it comes to love and romance. The 18th brings us a continuation of that with the moon in Scorpio trining Jupiter and Neptune in Pisces. And really, the 18th, I mean, it's special to me because my business is 418 and April 18th is 418. And what this particular day really sets the stage for is high-powered spirituality, high-powered metaphysics, bringing the occult in your own life into visibility. This also means, for those of you that do ritual magic, the 18th and even the full moon on the 16th would be a time to do something spiritual, do something elevating, do something that's going to raise your consciousness to the next level. Now, the 19th brings the moon in Sagittarius squaring Mars in Pisces. So you may find that there is some spiritual conflict within that arises. You may also find that it's not a good time to be brutally honest, but rather diplomatically honest. Also on that day, the moon trines Chiron. So we come back to an opportunity for healing the wounds that were exposed earlier in the month. Now, 420, I'm pretty sure most people know that date, more than just Hitler and Bart Simpson's birthdays. And that brings the solar ingress into Taurus. So it's going to bring a big grounding energy into the equation. It's going to be, I won't say alleviating, but it will be diminishing all of the Aries activity that has been present up until this point. So things are not going to be as hot-headed as the month starts off. Now, also on the 20th, we've got the moon sextiling Saturn in Aquarius. So it's a good time to bring closure to those group roles and group projects that you're started. And all of this sets the stage for the 21st, where we see a dramatic shift out of Aries influence into Taurus and Pisces. So the hot-headedness, the short tempers, the me, self-aggrandizement, and toxic ego is going to be put on the shelf until the next transit through a fire sign, which will be when it's in Leo from late July to late August. And what it sets the stage for is gently flowing sextiles over the next few months between Taurus and Pisces. Now, sextiles manifest as things going along smoothly. And when you've got water and earth together like this, what it is saying is that you can make a lot of success and a lot of progress in the physical world if you're emotionally invested in it. So if you're just going through the motions, it's not going to be that dynamic of a time. But if what you are doing because you're emotionally invested in it, this could be a fantastic time for a lot of growth. On that day, we also have the moon in Capricorn sextiling Mars in Pisces. So it's a good time to take your spiritual and personal practices to the next level. We also have the moon in Capricorn squaring Chiron. So we revisit those themes of the wound that started in the beginning of the month, but now it's no longer a woe is me, words hurt me, whine, whine, whine. Now it's more of a situation where, okay, I see the wound. What am I going to change? What am I going to do about it? It's no longer existential at this point. Now it's time for the rubber to meet the road. On the 22nd, the moon continues through Capricorn and it will be conjunct Pluto, so watch out for short tempers. Watch out for violence in the workplace, violence when it comes to power struggles and power exchanges and relationships. But on that same day, the moon is sextiling Jupiter, Neptune, and Venus, all in Pisces, and trining Mercury in the North Node in Taurus. So if your cool head prevails on the 22nd, you might find that there are some spiritual blessings and good things that are found if you just recognize the opportunities that are present. The trine to Mercury and the North Node, it tells us that any kind of spiritual disciplines and practices that you put in place to start on the 22nd, if you stick with them, can lead to strong positive results later in the year. The 23rd sees the moon square sun. I don't really have to talk about that much. It's going to be irritation between the mind and the physical body, or irritation between the mind and where you're at, physically speaking, in the physical world. And then the 24th has a moon Saturn conjunction in Aquarius. Moon Saturn conjunctions are pretty intense because they reveal where distorted feelings and emotions are present. So, a good way to think of a moon conjunct Saturn is you stub your toe and all of a sudden you think your foot's broken. It's blown out of proportion. So any emotions you might be feeling on the 23rd, 24th, and 25th that seem like huge problems are probably not huge problems. You are blowing them out of proportion. In other words, you might be jumping to worst case scenario during those few days, and that's the worst thing you can do. Now, if you have this natally in your birth chart, the moon conjunct Saturn is all about not being able to let go of the past. And the reason that matters is with the 23rd through the 25th, you may find that you get confronted with opportunities and challenges to let go of the past. There's no reason to return to the past. It's done. Move on. That's what all of us have to do. It's part of life. It's part of the maturing process. But on the 25th, we get taken out of our heads and put more into our heart and our emotions as the moon in Pisces conjuncts Mars in Pisces. On one hand, this is good. Your intuition will lead you in the right spiritual direction on that day if you ask for guidance. On the other hand, you might find that your emotions flash fire out of nowhere and they dictate your reactions or thought processes in ways that are ultimately detrimental. The 26th is where we see the biggest shift of the month, and I know some people out there probably disagree with me, and that's okay, but the reason I say it here is because we will have 5 planets in Pisces and 4 in Taurus. If you needed a line of demarcation to know when we're going to be moving out of that fiery Aries energy, that is the day, is the 26th. But we're not going to go gently into that good night, because on the 28th, 2 days later, Pluto in Capricorn stations retrograde, and it will be that way until October 10th. So even though the emphasis is on being grounded and using your emotions as fuel to get things done and having a lot of easy flowing success with regards to communicating your personal mission and your spiritual belief, right on the heels of that is the universe saying, good, I'm glad you have a plan. It's time to put it in motion between now and mid-October. Words without actions are hollow. A plan on paper doesn't mean anything. That's the whole root of the phrase, well, it looked good on paper. Yeah, it looked good on paper, but reality and actuality is a lot different than how things look on paper. Trust me, every astrologer knows this. And then finally, on the 30th, we end the month on the new moon in Taurus. So it's pretty interesting that April 1st starts off with a new moon in Aries, and then April 30th is the new moon in Taurus. Those kind of act like cosmic bookends, encapsulating the whole month. Because in most ancient spiritual traditions and ancient cultures, the calendar went from new moon to new moon. So this brings us in line with something that has been around for centuries. And I personally like this because what it means is when April 30th or May 1st rolls around, all we have to do is look back to April 1st and see exactly what has happened during that month, and it makes it easier for us to quantifiably look at the changes in our lives and where we go from here. When Pluto stations retrograde on the 28th, it's going to be the first substantial retrograde of the year. So this also means that up until about the 26th or so is still your prime time to start new cycles and new behaviors. But once Pluto goes retrograde, now we get into retrograde season, because following on the heels, within a month or so after that is the next Mercury retrograde in Gemini. So we go from Pluto retrograding at the end of April into Mercury retrograding in Gemini in May, and that starts firing off all the rest of the planets that are going to go retrograde periodically throughout the year, and the effect that that will have. So another way to look at this is that up until about April 26th or so, it's still a good time to be fully engaged in the outside world. It's a good time to make connections. It's a good time to put plans in motion. It's a good time to go, see, do. And then our emphasis gets changed back into looking at the self, looking at what internally we need to change. In other words, if you want different results, change what you're doing. That's a major theme for all retrograde cycles. Luckily, we don't have to worry about it too much until the end of April, but it's still worth reminding you here because it's saying that for the month of April, it still is a great time to be proactive and innovative. It's a great time to make connections with people or get reconnected with people you haven't seen in a while. But towards the end of April, we start to be pulled back from a consciousness level into seeing what we need to change within in order to produce changes from without. So, all in all, the theme of April is going to be wounds. Wounds getting triggered, and whether or not you choose to heal them. Other than physical wounds, all wounds can be healed. It's really that simple. All it requires is us to shift our consciousness in order to do it. And if you don't believe me, pay attention to how April unfolds. Pay attention to how April goes. You're going to get a lesson in it. Your wounds might not be your fault, but your healing is. And you should never expect other people to walk on eggshells around you. I've got a personal policy in my private life, which is that if I recognize I have to walk on eggshells when talking to people, I immediately crush those fucking eggshells as I walk and talk, because I've got no patience for that weak ass shit. That's me personally. That attitude doesn't work for everyone, and I get it. But the point I'm making here is if I recognize I have to walk on eggshells around you, I'm going to do everything I can to crush those eggshells with my speech, and your emotions be damned. And I would expect most or all of you listening to this to have that same attitude. If you recognize you have to walk on eggshells around people, they're not your people. They don't have your best interest in mind. They don't care about you. They're narcissistic, and that is toxic. Even though all of this might sound like a little bit of a rant, these are going to be the themes that come up during April. So if you're one of the walking wounded and you expect the world to cater to you, not going to happen. You're going to be confronted with that cold dose of reality where people just don't give a damn about you. If you're one of those that suffers from Chicken Little syndrome, always looking for the sky falling, it's going to rain pieces of heaven during the month of April that's going to make you cry, and it's really unfair. It would be really unfair of you to expect sympathy from anyone else. Yes, a lot of what I'm saying does sound confrontational, and maybe there's a little venom in there, but the reason for that is because the way to maturity and growth means thickening the skin. That does not mean the loss of compassion. That does not mean the loss of being a humanitarian. It simply means sometimes you got to have a thick skin for the little things in order to focus on the bigger things that are much more important and can heal more people. So I hope all this makes sense. Yeah, I did paint an intense picture with all of the chironic activity that's going on, but I hope that these few minutes of words prepare you for what's coming up. Because I can guarantee, and this sounds trite and erudite, I know, but I can pretty much guarantee that when the end of April comes around, you're not going to be the same person that you were at the beginning of the month, because all of your wounds have been exposed. All of your healing successes have been exposed. And you'll be left with opportunities and with a sense of asking yourself, where do you go from here? I hope you enjoyed it. Definitely ramp up for the new year if you haven't done it already. I'll be making my first in-person festival appearance the end of April at the Wildfire Beltane Festival outside of New Orleans. So if you're in that area of the United States, check it out. And there's been a lot of event planning. So as always, keep up with me on social media. Thank you to Adam Knox and the Cult of You for doing this. If you haven't seen the advertisements lately, I encourage you to look into what is the coven and see, when it comes to witches, what kind of witch I am. Anyway, everyone have a good one. I'll see you on the flip side.
I've always felt a little different, a little uneasy between regular folk. A bit of a dreamer, a lost cause, a little non-ordinary, some would say. I think I've always just been this way. My mother said I was special, my father thought I should be feared. But I knew that witchcraft coursed through my veins the first time I tasted the lips of the goddess inside the rain. Yes, I'm a witch, it's true. And sure, we are the ones who believe in the beauty of nature, who believe in the things science, absent of art, cannot explain, who instead of religion would have romance. And sure, you may think we have lost our way, when in the world of predictable things we have such unfamiliar things that we would like to say. But maybe, in a world so cold and alone, a little unfamiliar is exactly what is needed to show us the way home.